about Jaime Busto rather than Tony Bowe as the championship leader. So there's a full look at your starting order. It will go from right to left with Sondre Haga, the first man out through the sections, the lowest seed and the furthest down in the championship pecking order, currently 10th in the points. Matteo Grattarola, 9th in the standings, will be second out through the sections. Then it'll be Toby Martin. He is currently 8th in the points. No Gironi Fajardo, who was the wild card at X-Trial Barcelona. He's your odd man out. He is 7th in the point standings. And then the top 6 in the pecking order will be the last 6 out through sections 1 to 5 in the opening run. Round number 1 of X-Trial Pamplona, the inaugural X-Trial Pamplona. Plenty to look forward to here for the fans. We're not far away from a couple of past centres. We have had X-Trial at Bilbao, around about an hour and a half's drive, and we're not too far away from the border with Catalonia either. So it is very much close to the factories and to the bases for many of these riders. And as far as Spain is concerned, the dominant nation in the X-Trial World Championship, the top 4 in the championship standings, all Spanish representatives, and in fact 6 of the top 7 as well, with Benoit Bincaz the odd man out. Sondre Haga then about to embark on his first run, 5 minutes for 5 sections. 23-year-old, the second of 2 Gas factory riders in the field. Big move up for Haga to the manufacturer during the winter after he represented Beta, of course, last year. First mark taken through these green modules for Sondre Haga, just a single for leaning. The sump of the machine just cresting over that first, and down goes Sondre Haga now for a 5-mark score. So a tricky technical start in section 1. He was just talking about how he'd already taken him up for leaning, working his way through, but that ultimately had little relevance once he had then fallen. So a first fiasco of the run for Sondre Haga, and a big step to open with in the cable reels, section 2, as he looks to complete successfully his first section of the night. Sondre Haga then urged on by the crowd here, and down he goes for another 5-mark score, and giving us a bit of a demonstration of just how tall he is. The bike halfway up the section, and still he can more or less touch his toes on the ground, but that first step in section 2 was always going to be a challenging one, and so it proved for Sondre Haga. Tough start for the Norwegian. 2 failures out of 2 sections. And Haga, who of course finished 4th at X-Trial Andorra la Vella last season. 8 appearances to date in the X-Trial World Championship. Still learning the ropes at this level, no doubt about that. But he will have felt with that performance in Andorra that he'd rather cracked it at this level. First out through the sections is certainly not going to help him. That's as a result of his seeding position in the championship standings. Only 2 points scored at X-Trial Barcelona for beating Matteo Grattarola first time out. That's a solid effort to start section 3. These wooden blocks, a lot of height on that first step. Just a single mark taken for leaning. That's going to be the key to this section, avoiding taking a mark on the entry to it. Still a fair amount of work to do in this third section for Sondre Haga, but early failures in the first 2 have banked him plenty in terms of time, which he's still got almost 3 minutes. Time becomes a greater challenge in the second round, and then the more perilous and difficult sections in the grand final as well. But nonetheless, you want to stay on the right side of the stopwatch, and time will be used in the case of a tie in the opening round to settle starting order for round 2 and potentially a championship point. The winner of round 1, of course, will gain the first bonus point of the night. 2.5 minutes, so just halfway through the time allowance now for Sondre Haga, and the exit gate is almost in sight. He's got this mid-air turn to accomplish. He is positioning himself to give himself the maximum run-up, and with a little bit of a scrabble to the finish, Sondre Haga manages to make it through. We'll await confirmation of the result there. Sondre Haga then completing section number 3 by the looks of things. It's given as 3. So we'd already seen 1 mark for leaning earlier on. Haga obviously another mark for leaning and footing just to get out of that section there. So 13 out of a possible 15. He's managed to salvage his first completed section of the night and keep 2 marks off the scoreboard. But it does look as though This is going to be a tougher X-Trial than what we saw last time out in Wiener Neustadt, or indeed in X-Trial Barcelona, where the level of difficulty was a little bit lower, perhaps, than we've seen in the Palau Sant Jordi in the past. The trunks section number 4, you can see the height that Haga will have to reach here. It's another demanding step as far as Sondre Haga is concerned, the gas representative. And he is out for a 5-mark score once again. Third failure in 4 sections as he moves on to 18 marks now. And just one more to attempt, which is the scaffold tower, the signature section they want it to be here at X-Trial Pamplona. Sondre Haga preparing for that now. Just at the base of the tower, a real leap up to get us in to section number 5. That shows you the enormity of this section. It's a pretty long one in its full configuration as well. But Haga, with the early time banked as a result of those failures in sections 1 and 2. Got a little bit of time to try and get this one done. Just over 30 seconds remaining in section number 5 for Sondre Haga, who has had 3 failures in 4 sections thus far, already leaving himself with a lot of work to do if he wants to take a decent position here tonight. And Sondre Haga then makes it through to complete his opening run, and it is with a clean in section 5, so he finishes with a flourish, with 18 seconds still on the clock as well. Sondre Haga then will bank that time, and in the case of a tie-break, that may well work in his favour. So, not an inspiring start for Sondre Haga. 3 failed sections. Section 3, he managed to make it through with a 3-mark score, and then a clean at the end there in section 5. Next up, Matteo Grattarola. The Italian still working on his fitness and also adaptation to new machinery, of course, joining Vertigo for this 2023 season, and the start of his first campaign with Vertigo. Couldn't have got off to a worse start, really. Had an operation in January, a knee injury then just before the season opener at Barcelona. And Marco Mempor and X-Trial Wiener Neustadt last time out. The only man Matteo Grattarola has so far beaten in 2 rounds in 2023. So 3 championship points on the board, leaving him 9th in the pecking order. Matteo Grattarola with 2 drop marks now given, first for leaning, the other for footing, as he tries to position himself for this sizable leap, but has that mark for security now put him in a better position than Sondre Haga to make it through? Yes, it has. Good work from Matteo Grattarola. Confident start. That's a tough step for him to make it up. Almost takes another mark. Did he take another mark potentially there for leaning? Certainly looked over at the section observer. It was a marginal one there on the landing partway through this section number 1. That certainly is going to be a mark for leaning, and that's therefore going to be a failure for Matteo Grattarola. Accumulation of marks. He put his foot down as well. So whichever statistical measure you want to use, Matteo Grattarola out of section 1 with a failure. So that's 2 riders now who failed section 1. Can Matteo Grattarola bid to move above Sondre Haga by becoming the first rider to make it through this section 2? Big step with which we open the cable reels, and it was this big step to start that caught out Sondre Haga. Matteo Grattarola is up with a single mark for leaning, 1 for footing there, the left foot going down as well. That's certainly going to be 2 from the section observer. Of course, as always, we'll wait for official confirmation of these results, but we'll call them as we see them. Grattarola certainly accumulating a couple of marks there on the first step of section number 2, and now trying to position himself for a further move, but has bailed out on that one, so that's a second consecutive fiasco for Grattarola. Got himself up to a little bit of difficulty there at the top of the section with the assistant on hand. So it's 10 marks in the opening 2 sections for Matteo Grattarola, same as for Sondre Haga last time out. Now we move on to what is a crucial section 3, because Sondre Haga did manage to make it through this one. He did drop 3 marks. Matteo Grattarola, nice work up through the first step. I did say that's going to be a difference maker between some of the riders in this opening round. That first step, and as to whether they can get through it without taking a mark for leaning. So Matteo Grattarola then, clean thus far. In this one, section number 3. He's about halfway through it with about half the time still on the clock. Again, having failed in the opening 2 sections, just as Sondre Haga did before him. Got to make sure he leaves enough time for that section 5 as well at the end of this run. So far, so good then for Matteo Grattarola. Mid-air leap to manage here, no great problems there. Manages to keep up his momentum to hook the front tyre over the last of these modules. Now it's just about working his way through to the finish. His assistant encouraging calm. He's got 2 minutes still on the clock. 2 sections to come after this one. Grattarola, nice work on the landing. Positioning the front tyre where he needs it. Receiving a lot of encouragement and advice here. Here's Grattarola. Nice surge through to the finish. Take a mark for leading there just at the end. Another marginal one as far as Matteo Grattarola is concerned. It is given as a single mark. Matteo Grattarola did his very best to then urge the bike forward on the back tyre to avoid taking a mark. Nonetheless, it's given as one. So now on to 11 is Matteo Grattarola. But Sondre Haga was on 13 at the same stage, so the Italian a couple of marks clear of where the Norwegian was. He's into difficulties early on, though, in section number 4. The trunk almost burned away by the back tyre there, so that was 1 for leaning and 1 for footing, certainly. 2 marks at least so far in section number 4. In fact, it's been given by Jordi Sanchez. You can see there as 3 marks thus far, so any further drop marks and it will be a failure. And that, you would suggest, could well be the case right here. There it is. That's the step that brought Sondre Haga down for a fiasco. 2 failures in 4 for Matteo Grattarola, just it was for Sondre Haga before him, but immediately evident that the level of difficulties in the sections is pretty high. Matteo Grattarola, 2 marks then ahead of Sondre Haga, but with only just over 30 seconds on the clock to try and complete his 5th and final section of his opening run. So he'll be aiming for a single mark score at the most here to remain above Sondre Haga, who completed his opening ride with 18 marks and with a clean in this section 5. Let's see how Matteo Grattarola approaches this descent, and then the climb to partway through this section 5, which is the finish. That's a single mark for leaning there for sure, as Matteo Grattarola gets through to the finish just in time. 3 seconds still on the clock, so we wait for the official confirmation, but I think that'll move Matteo Grattarola on to 17, with very little margin in hand really over Sondre Haga, either through the sections or indeed in terms of time. So Matteo Grattarola then, like Sondre Haga before him, successfully completes 2 sections. But Haga takes 18 marks, and Matteo Grattarola's 17 mark score is now confirmed. So with a few seconds still on the clock, Matteo Grattarola comes through to complete his opening run. It's 17 marks for Matteo Grattarola, 18 for Sondre Haga. Toby Martin then is next up to 7th places for him in 2023 thus far, 6 championship points. Has been competitive throughout this season so far, had 7 cleans from the 10 sections at X-Trial Barcelona. Only finished a couple of marks behind the podium places there, and only 7 marks back from the cut at Wiener Neustadt last time out. Just had a few too many fiascos on his account. See if he can become the first man through any of sections 1, 2 and 4. Elegant work on the first modules of this opening section. So a confident start for Toby Martin. And a big leap there managed with a single mark for leaning. Now hauls the bike forward, so he will be able to press on. Toby Martin, so far so good. And whereas all of the riders have struggled in this section thus far, we're about to find out whether Martin's got something a little bit extra. He's watched on there, as you can see, by Adam Raga and also Aniol Gelabert. Toby Martin drops the sump down, misjudges the landing slightly, under reaches. So that's another mark drop there. Keeps the feet on the foot pegs though, so avoids taking any marks for footing. This is looking good though for Toby Martin. Sondre Haga failed section 1. Matteo Grattarola failed section 1. Another mark there for leading for Toby Martin. He's through to the finish of the opener. It should be a 3-mark score. We'll await confirmation of that. It is indeed. Toby Martin, 3 marks in section 1. First man to make it through the green modules. And already 2 marks up on where Sondre Haga and Matteo Grattarola were at the same stage. Big step to open section number 2. And Martin is straight down to a 5 through there. It's a very, very challenging opening step in the second section, but with an early failure, Martin banks a little bit more time now. See if he can get through section 4, which neither Haga nor Grattarola could manage. But a strong start from Martin, the fine ride in section 1. A little bit clumsy perhaps with the second drop mark in particular. 8 marks from 2 then. First man to make it through the opener. Section 3 has been successfully completed by both men thus far. Neither of them have managed it clean, and Martin won't manage it clean either. Single drop mark for leaning on the first step. Matteo Grattarola scored a single mark in this section 3. Martin would like to now go on and do the same. His assistant Alex Wigg barking out the orders as always. One of the most vocal presences in the X-Trial scene. Toby Martin then bridging across. And makes that look very easy, and working through quickly here, because having got through to the end of section 1, time is not his friend to the same extent as Grattarola and Haga before him. Good work on the landing there. There's not much to land on, and riders have managed to make it work for them thus far. Grattarola with 1 mark, Sondre Haga with 3, and Toby Martin is going to match the single mark score of Grattarola before him to move on to 9. So 2 marks up on where Grattarola was at the same stage. 2 sections still to come. This is looking very promising indeed as far as Toby Martin is concerned. As I said, he's been close to the qualification cut in each of the opening 2 rounds, and he pulled it off tonight. Big start to section number 4. The toughest trunk is still to come. You can see it on the left-hand side of your picture. That's the direction of travel now for Toby Martin, and Alex Wigg knows very clearly that that is the place for him to be. Martin now drops down to ground level, and he's got to make it up what is a real monolith of a trunk most of the way through section 4. If he gets through this trunk, he's basically got through this section. Neither Sondre Haga nor Matteo Grattarola have managed it thus far. 1.5 minutes, time is still on his side. Some efficient work through section 3, the wooden blocks to get to this stage. Up through the trunks they come. Toby Martin is up. He's done it. Martin with a single drop mark for leading. Super ride from him in section 4. And that really will put the cat among the pigeons. Martin on to 10. Grattarola was on 16 at the same stage. Grattarola finished his run on 17. Sondre Haga finished his on 18. And Toby Martin now has got to keep a cool head. He's seen Haga already clean this section. If Martin can do the same, he keeps himself right in contention for qualification. Toby Martin then, a descent, a step, and then a climb to the finish and the exit gate of his opening run. Just 1 fiasco on the board in this round 1 for Toby Martin. The Brit on 10 marks. Strong rides from him in sections 1 and 4. What about section 5? He's got to cap it off without making an error here. It's a strong finish as far as Toby Martin is concerned. Greets the crowd. They've enjoyed what was an incredibly positive ride there as far as Toby Martin is concerned. First clean of the run in the final section. The story there was about Martin getting through sections 1 and 4 and becoming the first rider to do so. Good work on that tall trunk, and indeed efficient work to get through to the finish with a little bit of time on his side as well. So Toby Martin leads the riders on 10, Matteo Grattarola 17, and Sondre Haga is on 18. Next up then is Aniol Jalabert, making a swift return to the series. Jalabert had already been announced as the wildcard for this X-Trial Pamplona before his outstanding ride in X-Trial Wiener Neustadt. 5th place finish for him in Austria, and 6 World Championship points on the board. Aniol Jalabert with a first drop mark over that first crest, and now an important landing for him, which he gets right. He will take another mark there for leaning, so that's certainly going to be 2 marks we've seen thus far for Aniol Jalabert. Makes his way through section number 1. Toby Martin, the first rider to make it through this one. Matteo Grattarola and Sondre Haga had failed it, and Jalabert now hoping to follow in the footsteps of Toby Martin. Remember, Martin finished on 3. Jalabert has an opportunity to make a little bit of a buffer ahead of Martin in this one. And we'll see whether he can become the first rider successfully through section number 2 as well. 1 minute already used for the first of the 5 sections in round number 1 for Aniol Jalabert. 10 marks the target score. Up he goes, and it is good work to avoid dropping any further marks for leading. I make that 2 for Aniol Jalabert in section number 1. It's now confirmed. So best rider of anyone through section 1, Aniol Jalabert. What can he do through the start of the cable reel? Section 2, up he goes. Single drop mark for leading. He's got to try and haul the bike forward now. He'll drop it back onto the sump. That should be another drop mark. 1 for footing there. We didn't see how Jalabert hauled himself up, but the left foot certainly was used, so he'll be on 3 now. Any further drop marks will certainly be a fiasco. Aniol Jalabert with an opportunity to get through the second section. He'd be the first man to do so. Only 2 marks have been given. Well, for me, that's an error because Jalabert, we saw with the left foot down, we'd seen him land on the sump, we'd seen him lift the bike and drop it back down, and that will now be 3. But Aniol Jalabert is a very, very lucky boy because that could easily have been a failure in section 2 for Aniol Jalabert, and I think that's probably the way that it has been judged up till now in this 2023 campaign, but I'd have to watch it back. Certainly my impression was that Aniol Jalabert had already accrued 3 marks before that last dropped mark in section number 2. So Jalabert on just 5 from 2 sections. He's 3 up on where Toby Martin was at the same stage. Martin, though, only dropped 2 marks in the remaining 3 sections. So Jalabert with another great start. He was so brilliant at Extra Wiener Neustadt in the opening round. That's going to be a drop mark for leaning. Not quite ideal as far as Jalabert is concerned. Rushing a little bit now because he's only got 2 minutes to make it through to the end of this section 3 and indeed complete the remaining 2, sections 4 and 5. Although section 5 not particularly long at this stage in terms of its current configuration. One final step to come in section 3 for Aniol Jalabert. Up he goes, left foot off the pegs, but it's not on the ground, and that's the main thing. Just another single mark for Aniol Jalabert. Best performance of the run so far. Takes a bit of hydration, but he's going to need to be quick about it. Section number 4 next up. Toby Martin, the first man to make it through with just a single dab. Aniol Jalabert. Another confident start here this evening. Podium was really within his reach last time out at Wiener Neustadt. He was inside the top 3 positions after his opening run, only a single mark away from the top 3 at the end of the night. So you'd have to consider him a contender. Now, did Aniol Jalabert exceed course limits? That's been given as a 5, and that could potentially be disastrous. It will drop Jalabert behind Toby Martin. And, well, on this occasion, Aniol Jalabert has not had the rub of the green. He did in section 2 for my money, but in that one, a little bit unfortunate based on the way that the course boundaries were judged last time out at Extra Wiener Neustadt. I'm sure Jalabert will argue about that later on. He's only got 30 seconds now in section 5, cleaned by Sondre Hager and Toby Martin. Single drop mark through this section for Matteo Grattarola. Aniol Jalabert. Up he goes, he's through to the finish, 21 seconds to spare because of that failure before the completion of section 4. And that could well be a section he comes to rue in the final countdown. Certainly drops him behind Toby Martin in the seeding order. And Martin still leads round 1 on 10 marks. So it's Martin in front on 10, Aniol Jalabert second on 11, Matteo Grattarola currently third on 17, and Sondre Hager fourth on 18. Benoit Kaz preparing himself now for his opening run. The new acquisition for Sherco in 2023, the 26-year-old event rider this season. The only event rider I can tell you confirmed for Extra Bordeaux next time out. The French representative, of course, 25 appearances to his name in the Extra World Championship, Benoit Kaz. He's had 4 podiums to date, and the most recent of those at Extra Bilbao back in 2020. 5 minutes on the clock for 5 sections. 10 marks the target score, set by Toby Martin. A mistake from Aniol Jalabert in section 4, exceeding the course boundaries, is what has dropped him back behind Martin and into second place. But otherwise, it was a stunning ride from Jalabert. So that means that all of our sections in the opening round have now been completed by at least one rider. And Benoit Bincaz matched them. Single drop mark there for leaning on the landing. Aniol Jalabert with 2 marks last time out, the best of anyone through here. Benoit Bincaz with an opportunity now to go better than that. Taking his time really in section 1, you'd have to say. Benoit Bincaz, got to be careful that he doesn't leave himself up against it, and down he goes, just as I say that. Bincaz with a little bit of alacrity, and it's cost him. He surges forward, but he misses the edge of the section, and down he goes. And he looks delighted about that, you'd have to say. Benoit Bincaz devastated in section 1. 5 marks to his name, trying to bang the bars back into position. And is that going to have to be a change to the spare machine now for Benoit Bincaz? In this circumstance, the time will continue to elapse. And this is bad news for Benoit Bincaz now. The clock continues to count down. He's failed section 1 that was just completed by 2 of his big rivals for 2023, Toby Martin and Aniol Jalabert. And as we said in the build-up, top 4 in the championship have rather escaped away. The quest for best of the rest, and potentially a position in the championship that could earn qualification for next season. Very, very early days in 2023 still, of course. And Benoit Bincaz now only has 3 minutes for the remainder of this course. It's a 5-mark score right at the start of section 2 that, remember, was completed successfully by Aniol Jalabert. That does give the best part of that 3 minutes still to Benoit Bincaz for the remainder of the course, which might work in his favour. Section 3 next up. Everyone has completed this thus far. Oh, down goes Benoit Bincaz. And surely not helped by a change of machine, by that crash in section number 1. Bincaz is shaking his head. Salvage what you can now, Benoit, because the second run is going to be a tough task if he's already stranded adrift to the pack. We've seen that with Matteo Grattaroli. He's had bad first runs in each of the opening 2 rounds this season. And with the margins so fine and the quality and the standard so high, it is very difficult to make up lost ground. Benoit Bincaz then with a hat-trick of fiascos. Not at all the start that he would have expected. And only 2 marks ahead now of Matteo Grattarola, but with 2 sections still to complete. Section 5 still to come. Penultimate section here for Benoit Bincaz. The main step of it is the one he has approached now. He's at the bottom of the section at ground level. This is where Aniol Jalabert was judged to have exited the course boundaries. Benoit Bincaz okay for now. Sizable step, 1.5 minutes. Early failure in section 3. Up he goes and down. It is a 4th consecutive failure for Benoit Bincaz. The 9th fast turning into a disaster for him. He goes bottom of the pile. He's got 1 minute to complete section 5. I would say this is the easiest of the sections in round number 1. If he can get a clean through it, he will only be 2 marks off Sondre Haga, 3 marks off Matteo Grattarola. But already you'd have to suspect that Benoit Bincaz is talking in terms of avoiding the basement position in tonight's extra, rather than thinking about those podium places that he felt eluded him by very little in the opening 2 rounds of this season. The crash in section 1, damage to the bike, a change of machine, and coming out onto not the first choice of bike for Benoit Bincaz has certainly worked against him, but it will have also affected his psychological state. And you'd have to put some of those drop marks down to that as well. Just over 20 seconds on the clock, so sufficient time for Bincaz surely to get through to the finish here. He is still clean in section 5. He will finish clean in section 5, but that is the only section he manages to complete in round number 1. So Bincaz with 20 out of a possible 25. 4 fiascos. 4 of those sections completed by at least one rider. Toby Martin completed sections 1, 3 and 4. That's why he leads the way. Aniol Jalabert completed sections 1, 2 and 3. So Benoit Bincaz slots in at the bottom of the pile on 20 marks. Ahead of him, Sondre Haga, 18. Matteo Grattarola, 17. Aniol Jalabert on 11. And Toby Martin on 10. Now come your big 4. Top 4 men in the championship standings, the men who've been on the podium in the opening 2 rounds of this season. Adam Raga with a 3rd place last time out, and extra Wiener Neustadt. That's how it's done, ladies and gentlemen, on that first module. Perfect landing on the other side. Doesn't slip off the side of the section. That'll be his first drop mark. Takes a foot, the right foot goes down. And manages to avoid a mark for leaning there, but takes one for footing instead. Adam Raga will be targeting that 10-mark score of Toby Martin. He's dropped 1 of them already. Martin, remember, dropped 3 marks in section 1. 4 times world champion Adam Raga. Certainly the most experienced rider in this field, 40 years of age, and making his 145th extra appearance here tonight. The final step of section 1 now in sight. Opportunity to become the best of anyone through here. Adam Raga does so. Good work from him in section 1. It is just the single mark. Aniol Jalabert dropped 2 through there. Toby Martin conceded 3 marks. Now, this will be very interesting. First step of section 2. Only Aniol Jalabert has made it through here thus far. Adam Raga fires up. He lands it on the sump. And will he have taken a mark for footing there with the left foot? Did he manage to remain on the foot pegs? Certainly good work thus far either way from Adam Raga. Sent the other side now. 3.5 minutes to go. Section number 2, the cable reels. Adam Raga, slightly different approach to the other riders through here. Not that we saw all of them get this far, of course. Aniol Jalabert was the man who completed, first man who completed section 2. Adam Raga now joins him as the 2nd man through. 2 marks from 2 sections. And remember, both of those sections were failed by both Haga and Grattarola. 5 from Aniol Jalabert through them was the best until Raga was out onto the arena floor. So once again, it looks as though we've got a clear top 4 favourites for those podium places. Raga already distancing himself from the pack. Could he become the first rider to successfully complete all 5 sections in round number 1? Oh, that was nice from Raga. Just bouncing his way clear of the sump. Still given as a clean. It was very close. Had a few tonight that I've said have been fairly marginal calls on the sump. The riders know how to urge themselves and tease their bike away from taking a mark for leaning. Adam Raga then on 2 thus far. Two minutes still to go. More or less on target in terms of time, despite having made it successfully through those opening 2 sections. What now is his approach in section 3, getting himself in a little bit of a tangle as he tries to maximise his use of that platform. And he's done so well in section number 3. First rider there, clean. The 3rd section of round number 1. So Adam Raga on 2, really laying down the gauntlet to the rest of the field. Section number 4. Now this one has already proven tricky. For Sondre Haga, for Matteo Grattarola, for Aniol Jalabert and for Benoit Bincaz. Section 4 resulted in a 5-mark score. Only Toby Martin has made it through here successfully with a single drop mark to his name. How about Adam Raga? Raga then preparing himself at the base of the section. Up he goes, he's down for a 5-mark score. Now that is something of a surprise. And it throws open the provisional leadership of this round one as well. If Raga were to drop a few marks here, Toby Martin would be back in play for that top seeding position. In reality, though, only one rider has dropped any marks through this Section 5. Matteo Grattarola was pushed for time and dropped one. You would expect Adam Raga to finish this run on a score of 7. Anything more than that at this stage, you would say, is a mistake. And no mistakes are forthcoming. Adam Raga, with 6 seconds to spare on the clock, gets through to the end of section number 5. So it is a 7-mark score with which Adam Raga leads X-Trial Pamplona. 10 marks in second place for Toby Martin. Third now for Aniol Gelabert on 11. Then Matteo Grattarola 17, Sondre Haga 18, and Benoit Bincaz in the placement position on 20. Well, Adam Raga and Gabriel Marseille have had very little to separate them through 2023 thus far. Placing third and fourth in the championship. The scoring has been tied between them at the end of the second round in pursuit of the qualification positions both in Barcelona and in Wiener Neustadt. Gabriel Marseille got the upper hand first time out in the Palau Sant Jordi. First time out was Adam Raga, who managed to make it through to the grand final. So Gabriel Marseille targeting 7 marks here. It's a low score. Just a single failure for Adam Raga, a single failure for Toby Martin, and indeed for Aniol Gelabert. 3 failures apiece, remember, for Matteo Grattarola and Sondre Haga. Single drop mark there for leading. Well, in fact, 2 have now been given for Gabriel Marseille in this section number 1. Ah, no, that's revised now to 1. So Gabriel Marseille with just a single drop mark thus far in section number 1. So far, so good through here. Adam Raga, too, scored a single mark in the opener. One big step still to come. Gabriel Marseille. 4 podiums from 16 appearances for him in the X-Trial World Championship. Of course, all on Montesa machinery. His debut back in 2018 in the World Championship. Up he goes. Good work to complete section number 1. Just a single mark in the end. A little bit of prevarication about what the score might be. But ultimately, it is just that single dab. Gabriel Marseille, same score as Adam Raga through section 1. Again, little to separate them. 3 points between them in the championship. Big opener to section 2. But big steps these days are Gabriel Marseille's specialty, and he had no problems there. Single drop mark for leading. Top of that tower of cable drums. Some massive reels for Gabriel Marseille to make his way through. We saw how Adam Raga approached this next step. And Marseille the same. Just to the side on the second layer, as it were. A little bit of a run up. Some delicate work from Gabriel Marseille, and that is a fine ride in section 2. Great start to this run then from Gabriel Marseille. Matches Adam Raga, 2 marks from 2 sections. Now Raga was clean in section 3, but he failed section 4. Section 4 will be the opportunity for Marseille to take an upper hand in pursuit of a place in the grand final. Drop mark at the start of section 3. That's bad news for Marseille. I highlighted that right at the top of this run as being an important potential differentiating factor if riders have low scores. That single drop mark for leading on the opening step. Marseille then will continue on. 3 marks now for Gabriel Marseille. Adam Raga was on 2 at the same stage. Marseille will have an opportunity now in section 4 to move above Adam Raga. Only 1.5 minutes on the clock. This could be absolutely pivotal in terms of the race for the top 3, the podium places tonight. We won't know until the end of round 2, of course. Opening round does have 1 World Championship point up for grabs, but it's only half of the story in terms of qualifying. Big step here. Adam Raga failed it. Single mark through here for Toby Martin. Can Gabriel Marseille move now above Raga in the pecking order? Big step. Marseille is up. Single drop mark for leaning. Urges the bike forward and he's through. Single drop mark in section 4. Marseille remains on just 4 marks from 4 sections. 1 in each. 40 seconds now on the clock to complete the course. 3 marks to play with ahead of Adam Raga. Another great battle in prospect between the 2 of them. The young gun Marseille and the veteran Raga. Marseille keeping up the pressure. A small error from him at the start of section 3, but Raga's own mistake in section 4 is what has given Gabriel Marseille a golden opportunity here. Just over 10 seconds on the clock. Does need to be quick about it, and he is. Gabriel Marseille then takes the lead of Extra Pamplona. It's 4 marks from 5 sections. First clean of the run in section 5. Crucially, a mistake from Adam Raga in section 4, and Gabriel Marseille has punished it. Gabriel Marseille then, your new leader on 4. Adam Raga on 7. Martin on 10. Aniol Jalabert 11. Matteo Grattarola and Sondre Haga each with 3 failed sections, and Benoit Bincaz with 4. And out your scorers in round number 1. I'm Busto next up. Reigning and 4 times world number 3. Certainly looking at his best ever ranking in 2023. Second in the point standings, only 5 back, remember, from Tony Bow. Jaime Busto with his first drop mark of the run. 1 for length for leading there. Busto, your most recent winner last time out at Extra Wiener Neustadt, the 3rd victory of his career. And you'd have to say, Busto could be even closer in the championship standings to Tony Bow than he is. Because he certainly threw away 3 championship points in the final at Extra Barcelona. And Busto go all the way to challenge Tony Bow tonight. Last 2 men out are your top 2 and your main championship contenders. Busto, single drop mark in section 1. Important thing for Busto here is to make sure he gets through all 5 sections, as Gabriel Marseille did before him. That may well be enough to lead Adam Raga. Fine start to section 2. Raga and Marseille both dropped a single mark through here. We'll see what happens for Jaime Busto. Remember, Busto will already be thinking about the first World Championship point that's available in round 1. Tony Bow has taken 3 of the 4 bonus points available thus far. Here then comes Jaime Busto. Putting himself into place. Beautifully done in section 2 from Jaime Busto through the cable reel successfully. That's 2 out of 2 for Busto. The first man clean through there. Single mark from 2 sections. He's now 1 up on where Adam Raga and Gabriel Marseille were at the same stage. To match Marseille from here on in, to remain above him in round 1. Nice course this, because he has separated the riders out. You've got Benoit Bincaz at the bottom with 4 failures. Gabriel Marseille was able to complete all of the sections and finish on 4. So it split the riders well, but without being a kind of clean or 5 scenario. Jaime Busto now through the wooden block. Section number 3, cleaned by Adam Raga. Busto so far is clean as well. 2 minutes still on the clock, still roughly in the same position as the others who made it through the entirety of the course. Almost takes a mark for leading through there. I think he's just about saved it as a clean. Kavistan watching on. That's now confirmed. A clean for Jaime Busto in section 3. Still on just a single mark. Even failing this section 4, he would still remain inside the top 3 as long as he cleans section 5. Busto, though, will want to build a buffer and will also want to keep himself in contention for a World Championship point. 2 men have made it through, Toby Martin and Gabriel Marseille. Can Jaime Busto join them? Section 4, he's up. He's up with a mark for leading. And that's good enough. Jaime Busto is through. In section 4, he moves on to a 2-mark score. And as long as he doesn't now fail this section 5, he will beat Adam Raga in the opening round. Jaime Busto obviously hitting problems late on through that section. Races out, and I would presume that's a change of machine with only 40 seconds on the clock for Busto. So whether he had a flat tyre or something like that late on in the section, but either way, Busto, second rider then to rush back to the pits. Less than 30 seconds now on the clock for him. Oh, what a leap that is! Well, that's a very different approach to the other riders, but no problem for Busto. Oh, he's delighted with that. This young man pumped up tonight. That reaction really demonstrates it. 17 seconds, still on the clock. Brilliant performance from him in his opening run. Should be a 2-mark score for Jaime Busto from 5 sections. Result hasn't yet come through, but great determined effort from Jaime Busto. There it is. It's a 2-mark score from Busto. He moves 2 marks ahead of Gabriel Marseille, 5 up on Adam Raga. And it's easy to trace where that 5-mark score comes from, isn't it, for Raga? Section 4. That could yet prove disastrous for Raga's hopes of qualification. Still another 5 sections, of course, for Raga to try and make it back. Meanwhile, we wait for Tony Bowe. Looking for his first championship point of the night. Needs to beat a 2-mark score there set by Jaime Busto. As I said previously, Bowe's taken 3 of the 4 available bonus points thus far. He has also left 6 points on the table in 2023. Not quite as convincing as in so many of his title-winning campaigns. And tonight a really important one for him to put some measure of control back on his season. Some distance to the rest of the title contenders. Tony Bowe. First drop mark, and very precarious he was for a moment there as well as he teetered on the edge with the front tyre locked sideways to try and give himself some balance. There's only 1 mark now to play with for Tony Bowe. If we do end in a tie, it will go to time. Jaime Busto banked 17 seconds. See what Tony Bowe can do here. Watching on, Bowe makes his leap, so successfully. So section number 1, a single mark on the board. Jaime Busto dropped a mark through that section as well, so far from disastrous at the moment for Bowe. Remember, he's also got to target the 7-mark score of Adam Raga to make sure he finishes round 1 inside those top 3 positions. That's beautiful from Bowe. You think about how the riders struggled with the first step of the cotton reels, particularly the first 4 or 5 out through this section, and then you watch Tony Bowe attack it as though it's nothing. He was able to glide up to the top. Looking for a clean to match Jaime Busto in section 2. Tony Bowe has done that. 1 mark then from 2 sections. Tony Bowe. Section 3, another section that Busto cleaned. He's just ticking them off 1 by 1, and that's what he needs to do. First step completed without dropping a mark for leaning. That's important. Still a feet-up affair from Tony Bowe in section number 3. Jaime Busto the target, particularly in the context of the World Championship. Old rival Raga at the moment occupies third position. Top three, remember, will qualify to the grand final. Good landing from Bo. Sets himself out now, pointing towards the exit gate. And clean in section 3. Still on only one mark. Takisa Fujinami, the Repsol Honda trial team boss, watches as his man does his job. Fujinami's got work on his hands this season, hasn't he? Because his main man, Tony Bo, has got a bit of a task and a bit of a challenger in Jaime Busto. Section number 4. This is the key. Marseille and Busto both dropped a mark here. Adam Raga failed it. Tony Bo, can he clean it? If not, it's all about time, but you'd have to say Bo is in a very good position in terms of time as well. Perhaps he's better off just taking the mark here, making sure, and then getting through to the finish to win round 1 and another World Championship point. Can't afford any mistakes here. Adam Raga watching on. Tony Bo is up. He will take 2 marks. He's given 2 marks there. Well, he's not going to agree with that, I don't think, but Tony Bo moves on to 3, and Jaime Busto will now take round number 1 and a World Championship point. Drama in the penultimate section of round 1. Tony Bo looked like he was the favourite. He knew exactly what he needed to do, but he wasn't able to do it. And Jaime Busto narrows the gap at the top of the championship standings to just 4 World Championship points. Tony Bo remains inside the top 3. He doesn't agree with that, does it? Does he? Shake of the head from Tony Bo. And you can see why he's arguing that. He will feel that his foot didn't leave the foot pegs and that it should only have been a single mark at the top. That's what he's trying to argue. But when Bo is arguing with the section observers, you know that he is feeling the stress and he's feeling the strain. He certainly was last time out. We saw him really contesting one of the decisions. And he's going to go over to remonstrate with the officials here, Tony Bo. It's not going to affect the outcome. Confirmed results then. Jaime Busto wins round 1 of Extra Pamplona. Takes his second bonus point of this 2023 campaign. Beats Tony Bo on the basis of that crucial section 4. Gabriel Marseille, the other man, inside the top 3 positions. The top 3 all able to successfully complete all 5 sections. Adam Raga and Toby Martin, as well as Aniol Jalabert, with a single fiasco apiece, have work to do to get back inside the top 3. Matteo Grattarola and Sondre Hager with 3 failures in their opening runs. A disastrous start for Benoit Bincaz. But the big story of the opening round, first blood to our most recent winner, Jaime Busto.